Hey everybody, welcome to Smashing Game Time. I'm your host, Nick. I am joined by two special guests today. I have the team at Black Tabby Games. I am joined by Abby Howard, the co-creator, artist, and editor of Slay the Princess. And I'm also joined by Tony Howard-Arias. I got that right. Lead writer and game designer of Slay the Princess. Guys, thank you so much for coming on the show and for coming to talk to us about your new game, Slay the Princess.
Yeah,
thanks for having
us.
Yeah, and I wanted to congratulate you. I was actually just on the Steam page. You guys won Best Indie RPG at the OTK Video Game Awards. Congrats.
We sure did. Thank you so much.
Very happy about that.
I forget that we're still technically in award season, so stuff is still going out, even though the VGAs have come and gone. So really quick, Black Tabby Games. How did you guys get started? I guess the better question would be, you guys are a married development team. Mm-hmm. How did you guys meet?
It was through a mutual friend that I knew in high school, and
when I went to college with.
Yeah, Tony went to college with her, and then we met through her, and we wound up doing a tabletop game together. Tony DM'd, and I thought he was cute, so we started going on dates together, and that's how we started.
And so did you guys have, when you met, was the background, were you guys both in coding or art majors, maybe working on an MFA? Was the intent always like, hey, we should make some games together?
No, that would be a really funny start to a relationship, though. Just, wow, I have game skills. We should get together and start a game studio and get married. Do it all. I was a cartoonist for, I think at that point, like 7 years. So I had released a bunch of graphic novels and had been working in comics for a long time. And I didn't study art in school. I studied evolutionary biology, but, it's good to know a lot of different things.
Yeah, I was working in marketing for a slew of boring tech startup jobs.
You also worked at the Boston Globe?
Yeah, look, I looked back at that time with tiredness in my soul. I know for some people that was a very interesting job, but I don't know. I've got that little bug where I can't work for other people for too long.
And you yearned for creative expression.
Yeah, so. I was a screenwriting major in college, but didn't really have an outlet for that stuff other than, I guess, improv in my adult life.
After a couple years of us dating, I want to say. We were at New York City Comic Con together, and Tony was kind of between
4 years.
4 years. I don't know how many. Anyway,
we've all lost track at this point.
We got talking with a friend of ours about doing a demon dating simulator. Well, it was more like just kind of an exercise in thinking through what it would be like. But
yeah, like a dating sim where every date you go on becomes a horror scenario over time.
Yeah.
And we were both kind of at career crossroads, and
I was wrapping up a graphic novel and not really loving what I had lined up next, or what I was trying to line up next, because a lot of comic books are, if you're working with like a mainstream publisher, then you're usually making kids graphic novels, and it's just not my style of stories. So I was struggling to come up with something that wasn't too grim for 12-year-olds.
And I was done with the tech startup I'd co-founded with some college friends, and was trying to figure out the next thing. So we had an idea, and then we ran with it, and then COVID happened, and it forced us to really run with it, and that became Scarlet Hollow, which is our other, I was going to say first game, but it's our other one because it's still an ongoing project. Technically, Slay the Princess is our first full release. Scarlet Hollow is on episode 4 of its planned 7 in total.
Well, congrats on your debut, kind of debut, but not your actual debut.
Yeah, some awards consider this our debut, and others do not. I don't know what to make of that.
So technically, you guys are a brand new indie developer.
Technically, this is our first game.
We came out of nowhere with this one.
It's their first game. They've never done this before. Well, they've never released the full thing right away. But no,
we've never done an ending before. So
they've never done an ending. Well, congrats on the release. And it sounds like you guys both lived plenty of past lives before you got here. You mentioned Scarlet Hollow, your first game that is still, you guys are still going through the episodes, kind of got a telltale thing going there with the episodes, a Delta rune, if you will. Hey, you guys are in good company. So I haven't played Scarlet Hollow, but I've watched a trailer. I've seen some clips from it, and very human story. And Slay the Princess, you actually mentioned this in a drawing stream that you were doing, more existential. What was the thought process of going from one to the other?
I think part of it is I'm more of an existential writer. So Abby takes the lead on Scarlet Hollow's scripts, and then I come in and do my second pass and add more branching and variable relationships and stuff like that. Whereas Slay the Princess was really born out of what's a second project we could do that doesn't impede on Scarlet Hollow's development time too much. Because I had a bunch of bandwidth between episode releases while I would wait for Abby to have the first draft of a script done. And
you came up with a good idea.
Yeah, it was a good idea too.
Yeah.
And
it wasn't just going to be any game.
Yeah, exactly. Every time I tell this story, I feel like some people take it out of context and are like, oh, so this means that I see Slay the Princess is the cash grab game while Scarlet Hollow is the passion project. And I don't think we're capable of making things that aren't passion projects. Like Slay the Princess is very much a passion project. We poured our hearts and souls into it for the 7 months of dev time it took. It's just sometimes the realities of running a business form constraints that you have to adapt to. And they were very helpful constraints here.
Yeah. So I'd say a lot of the differences between Scarlet Hollow and Slay the Princess are kind of just differences in their creative. So, yeah. I tend towards more character-driven, grounded in reality kind of fiction.
With it being more on the existential side, does that make it harder on you guys from a marketing standpoint?
There have been no marketing challenges with Slay the Princess. It's been the easiest thing to market. I think there are a lot of marketing challenges with Scarlet Hollow. I think one of the biggest ones is that it doesn't really fit into the confines of how you typically pitch games. Games are very rarely pitched with their narrative first. And we need like a couple paragraphs of story description to get the concept of Scarlet Hollow across. Where Slay the Princess, I feel like the capsule on Steam does a lot of the talking there, and then we only need like 1 or 2 words of description, and people are like, "Oh, I see. I'm being told to do this thing." Well, what if I don't? And then that's kind of it. Voice acting helps a lot on the marketing side too. Very happy that we were able to secure 2 excellent voice actors who also have pretty substantial online fan bases that helped with the game. But yeah.
I feel like the fact that it's kind of based around this central idea versus based around a cast of characters and kind of a town that you want to get to know and a mystery to solve, then it's a lot easier to convey because it can be conveyed in a sentence.
Right. Like Scarlet Hollow, I feel it's very hard to sell an individual copy of it relative to Slay the Princess. And then once that copy is sold, that person tends to get very into it and puts in like 10 to 20 hours, and then they get their friends to do it. And that's given us like a nice long tail.
It gives them the mix.
It does. It drives them insane, as we can see on our Discord every day. We love you all.
It is a curse that we have spread to them.
And none of us would have it any other way.
So I want to get to Slay the Princess, but I do have one more Scarlet Hollow question. Yeah, so sure. You guys are 4 or 5 chapters into Scarlet Hollow.
4.
And now I'm sure, so since those have come out, Slay the Princess has come out. And so you're going back and working on these remaining chapters. Have you guys had any issues, or has there been any concern about kind of like, oh, we have these lessons that we've learned from Slay the Princess that we want to apply to these chapters that we're working on now? Or are you guys kind of in a different mindset, keeping it like, no, we need to stay in that mindset we were in before Slay the Princess, because we don't want to change the scope, or we don't want to make it feel like a completely different game?
Fortunately, I think everything is done.
Want to mute your computer, Abby?
I think everything that Slay the Princess has done for us has just increased our abilities.
Yeah, like I would say that like the first Slay the Princess demo was very influential on Scarlet Hollow episode 4's development. I think there's a reason why episode 4 is the strongest episode by far there, and then episode 4's development was very influential on Slay the Princesses for the rest of the game, and now I think it's a given that we're going to take the lessons we've learned from this process, even if some of that is just growing as writers and artists and applying it to what comes next in Scarlet Hollow. The hardest thing with Scarlet Hollow is knowing when to stop editing early chapters, because it's such a long project, and I feel like both of us have improved as creative so much over the course of its development that it can be hard to like go back to the first couple chapters, which people do still love, and be like, oh, I would have done this differently if I knew what I knew now. But also, like, the first 4 episodes together are 580,000 words of dialogue long, so like you can't really change too much of what happens in the first couple chapters without swapping out like a load-bearing beam in the basement of the game that everything else is reliant on.
And of course, fortunately, like we have all of these people who really love it, so that helps me to know that I don't have to really keep going back and editing, even though I know now that if we start the project over, it would be so much better for it, because we've just grown so much through this process. But that's also something I'm very familiar with, like having worked on a lot of graphic novels before, because by the time you hit the end of a graphic novel, you've always improved so much that you look back at the beginning and you want to just redo it all from scratch. It is a very familiar feeling, and it's just something you got to sit with as a creative to know that you might now see all of its flaws, but nobody else is going to.
I was about to say, if you are watching this and you have not yet played Scarlet Hollow, we are not negging our game. The first 2 episodes are still very good. People like it. You should buy that too.
And there may be a few assets that I'll fix. Just a few. It's okay. It's only like 5 of them.
Well, I think that's a very human reaction, especially when you're working in the arts. I've got a screenplay that's buried in the yard that no one should ever see. But at one point, I thought that was the greatest thing I ever wrote. So I can totally relate to the feeling like earlier stuff's not, representing you where you're currently at.
Exactly.
So that leads me into my next question. Slay the Princess, what the hell, you guys? You're supposed to save the princess. Where did this idea come from?
So it started with playing in a room of constraints, and those constraints were what scenarios can we come up with that would require fewer individual art assets from Abby. So like if we're looking at like just sort of making almost like a bottle episode type game where it's a singular location with like one character on screen, what can we do with that? And I think it very quickly landed on the idea of, okay, what if you're sent into a basement to execute this prisoner? And you're kind of given some information that she's very dangerous, but you're given a suspiciously light number of details, and have to decide what you do on that. And the reason that you're given so few details is she's like a monster that changes her shape based on what others believe her to be. So inherently you have to have incomplete information, otherwise
you get, the more powerful she could be. So, and then when she exhibits any amount of power, then it's just like an exponential scale from there.
And then that very quickly grabbed a princess angle to it. I think Abby suggested a princess angle.
Because it was like locked away in a tower. I think it was always a cabin, but just like the idea of some important person locked away.
Yeah, so. And then she suggested just calling it Save the Princess. Ironically, I realized that Slay is like a half rhyme with save, and to our astonishment, when we Googled the title, which instantly felt like a great title, there really wasn't much of anything. So we rushed into that.
Before someone else could, gobble it up. So it's an existential game, and very dark game. Like if you're just looking at screenshots, you're like, oh, this is kind of dark. But I found it as I was playing it more and more, this game's kind of funny. Was that always the intent? Are one of you secretly a comedy writer? And
we both are.
Okay, all right.
I start doing like just gag comics, and I've always loved, especially the intersection of horror and humor. It's always been kind of where I live. So
yeah, I wrote comedy in college, and yeah, like I think horror and humor have a lot of similarities in how they play with the audience's expectations, and because of that, they're very effective when used in conjunction with each other, where you can use comedy to subvert expectations in one direction, which gives you more room to re-subvert those expectations in another direction with horror.
Now, Tony, you mentioned some improv earlier. Was there any improvisation during any of the recordings? I know you guys got some very talented voice actors who...
Very little.
There's one line.
Which one?
The bomb.
Oh yeah, could we have a bomb? But yeah, for the most part, they just stuck to the script.
Okay, and so there, we were talking before we hit record. So many princesses, so many. When it came to directing your voice actors, I mean, did you were you bumping into situations where like, okay, well, the prisoner's sounding too much like this princess over here, we need to change this or that? Was there a lot of like rewriting on the fly when you realize that like, oh, this is kind of, these two things are kind of bumping?
There wasn't any rewriting from this.
But some of the princesses were definitely really hard to figure out. Especially there are some princesses that are fusions of two princesses, and
those are the hardest to record.
The hardest, because you have to say, well, these two voices. Can you somehow do one that is both of them at once? Unfortunately, we can help with like some vocal effects for some princesses. So that means we can just carry over a vocal effect to the fusion princess, and then that helps. And then she can kind of like read it more like the other princess, and that fusion works. But then there are some that were just so difficult. And it's because like she's an incredible voice actress, and we just gave her a horrible challenge. So
any particular princesses stand out as a nightmare to record? That wasn't an on the nose comment. That wasn't pointed at the nightmare.
Yeah, the Wraith was really hard. Like somewhere in between, because that's Nightmare and Spectre together. And also in her recording booth, I think it was like 90 plus degrees or something.
Yeah, it was an August recording, and the AC wasn't on.
Because
unfortunate.
If the AC is on, it makes a sound. So she was stuck in a super hot room trying to record this very difficult character who is just kind of hard to pin down because it's just very difficult. So good job to her, though. She did it.
Wonderful job from both. And there was points in the game, and this was about a month ago, where I was like, oh wait, this is the same person the whole way through. Kind of blew my mind as I was playing through that. So you guys did an AMA on our games. I want to say it was about a month ago.
Yeah, it was like roughly a week after the release, I think.
After release. And so, and you kind of mentioned this earlier, the concept came up with in May of this year or May of last year?
Last year.
Okay.
We're not that fast. We're very fast, but we're not that fast.
Very fast. Like, my gosh, is there something already in the in the chamber that we're going to see in a few months? So, I mean, okay, so you get the idea for the game last May. You're still working on Scarlet Hollow as well at that time. Any challenges in balancing the two at the same time? I know we kind of talked about like, making sure the scope of one doesn't sneak into the other, but anything else off the top of your head?
It's hard to switch modes.
Yeah, switching modes is really tough. I've now switched back into Scarlet Hollow mode. And
I remain a little bit on Slay the Princess mode.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to be, because you're still bug fixing. So yeah, switching is the toughest thing to do. They're so different in the way that they feel to us personally. So, but once you switch, then you go right back into it.
It's like a glove. You were just like, oh wow, yeah, I forgot how well this fit. I forgot how much I liked doing this.
Yeah, and of course, like having just pushed ourselves really hard to write a game like Slay the Princess, like returning to things that are comfortable feel even more comfortable, because now things that were challenges before for Scarlet Hollow they just don't feel that scary anymore, which is good. It means that they're going to be even better than they were going to be before.
Except for the narrative bloat, like Scarlet Hollow, just by nature of how many decisions are in it, is a lot to hold in your head.
Yeah. I do have to kind of catch myself up on some of these things. Like there's one character in particular who can have all sorts of things happen to him, and I think I have to write his scenes 8 times
at least
to
it's too
make
much.
Sure that all of the variables are accounted for. But this is what we're pouring all of our resources into, so this is what we really care
about. So we talked about the game being funny. The game also kind of gets gross a little bit. I had the privilege of playing it on Steam Deck on a flight, and I'm I'm doing my best to avoid spoilers, just because based off of your guys' AMA, you don't want to spoil too much, but also you don't want to.
The game's been out like a month and a half. I feel like if folks are listening to this, they've probably already played. And if you are listening and you have not played yet, pause the podcast, play the game, return to the podcast. This is now a spoiler zone.
Tony took the words right out of my mouth. So I'm on the plane and I get to the prisoner, and I'm sitting next to this wonderful, wonderful older woman who's just the nicest lady. And she's like, oh, you're playing a game. That's very nice. And I don't think anything of it, because I'm having a nice conversation with the prisoner. And
then you give her the knife.
She lops her head off in the middle of the flight. Was there anything that went over the line for you guys? I know you mentioned there wasn't too much rewriting, but was there anything where it was like, this is too much, we still got the ESRB breathing down our necks or something?
That scene, I think, was the most.
Yeah, and there was an alternate version of that actually did cross the line. So instead we changed it to what it is, which does not cross the line for us. But we did also give people the option with that one in particular to close their eyes if they wanted to. Like you could decide not to look at the imagery. I recommend looking at the imagery. I am proud of it.
I think it's worse if you don't look, honestly, because you have to imagine what all those sounds are.
Yeah.
And I think, like, compared to the loose original one, which was you would be the one doing the decapitation, this one just thematically fit a lot more. It makes her character more compelling. So that was got to that point in the script, was just like, nah, this isn't correct. We'll move on. It's funny that you played that on an airplane. We got in trouble when someone played Scarlet Hollow on an airplane, and they did this whole "Am I the asshole?" thread on Reddit, being like, I got yelled at by this old woman for playing this horrific game on a flight. And like, Scarlet Hollow is a lot more infrequent with the like body horror than Slay the Princess is. Over the course of maybe 8 hours, you will at most see maybe 4 pieces of brutal imagery. But that Am I the Asshole thread got picked up by like 5 or 6 different British tabloids.
Just absolutely running with it.
I've been.
Hey, it markets itself.
Yeah, it was so funny.
Because how could these terrible devs make this? And how could this terrible person play the sinful content on an airline?
I mean, once she lobbed her head off, I wasn't worried about her chewing her wrist off anymore. I was like, hey, you know what? They saw the worst of it. It's just a human being chewing through her wrist. Leave her be. Abby, on the art side, was any of this tough I know you like working in the what's the word? I'm like the cosmic horror side of it. Was any of this like harder on you to draw, or was it just like not challenging from like oh, this is hard, but challenging as in oh, this is gross, like I don't like this?
You're more on the gross side than the cosmic horror side.
Yeah. things. Like the reason that the gore is so it's lovingly rendered, I would say, and that's because it fascinates me, the flesh, So I love to meditate on having a body and how horrible that is, and all of the awful things that can happen to it. So yeah,
horrible. It's rad having a body.
In fact, made a lot of the things probably more awful than they had to be. There's another part in the Beast chapter that can get pretty gross.
Part where you get bored, yeah.
Beast, it can get pretty gross.
I played that one last night, and I was like, okay, are you gonna swallow my top half so I can stat? I was sitting there watching. I was like, oh, because there were a few times where I like made a choice, and I was like, okay, like obviously the next choice I'm gonna make is the one where it's do or die, and I didn't get that choice. I died right there. I was like, oh no, my guts.
Yeah, were you bitten in half?
You're bitten in half. That's a different one.
Yeah, because you can also get swallowed whole.
Inside of her, and you're dissolving, and you have to like cut your way to her heart. Anyway, I had a lot of fun with that.
I think I read one of the achievements and kind of had that spoiled in the achievement.
Yeah.
And so when I got cut in half, I was like, oh, are they going to come back for the other half? So yeah, but the bottom half of me was taken out, and yeah, that was gross. That was really gross.
But the stuff that I did struggle with some things, and it was
the cosmic horror
stuff, because drawing a poem is very difficult.
It's that part where the nightmare takes her mask off. I don't know if you got to that, but that was just sort of like her conveying her inner world through poetic thoughts. That took you days
to figure out, and it's not that many illustrations. Meanwhile, the gore stuff took me like maybe much
hours.
Less time than that. Yeah. So I mean, the real struggle of it is that both you and the princess exist so far outside of the actual world. Like neither one of you can use any real imagery from the world to talk about like a life lived. So that was just really hard. At some point I like made it too abstract, and then we had to like draw it back to something recognizable. It was so hard. It was such a struggle, and I'm still kind of like a little unhappy with it.
No, it's great. No edits, no notes.
It's perfect. It's a 10. We don't need to do any of that. On the influences side, I saw some the usual suspects, the names you see every once, the Stanley Parable, the Disco Elysiums of the world. I think I saw Tony mention that he started House of Leaves after the game was done.
Mm-hmm.
On that front, do you think this might be a little different game if you had read House of Leaves beforehand?
I don't think so. I think touches on a lot of the same themes, and I don't know. It's hard to say. Like I feel like for books, I borrow themes less. The influences question is always a hard one because there tend to be so many influences that don't fall under the scope of what one would normally consider influences for a video game. Like I think with something like Slay the Princess, I think a lot of people are when they ask that question, they want to know, oh, so what are the games on that list? And it feels like a lot of it is more music, some movies, like some TV. I don't remember if this was on the Reddit AMA, but I know like I put together my influences list on a Tumblr post ages ago, and Ceremonials by Florence and the Machine was like up there towards the top. Madoka Magica is on there for this. I think House of Leaves is not quite funny enough for it to be something that would have influenced the style, because I always have to be a jokey little lad.
You come from an improv background, of course.
Unfortunately.
Sometimes you can't turn it off. I mean, just look at me with some of my questions. And hey, but good on you finishing House of the Leaves. I got a copy behind me that's been
I'm
sitting
not
on
done
page
yet.
Oh,
It's
I'm
like a third of the way through, and it's on hiatus while I get through Baldur's Gate.
Oh, why are you doing this to yourself? So many hours between both of them. Funny you mentioned music. Brandon Boone, your composer, is not here to defend himself.
He suffered for this project.
Yeah, 54 songs under the same leitmotif.
Mm-hmm. Leitmotif?
Leitmotif? I do improv. I don't do music. These were I live in Missouri. We haven't gotten that word out here yet. Why are you guys doing this to your poor composer?
Well, we pay him.
We pay him.
He loves the work. I think he really loves a challenge too.
To be fair,
everyone on our team really
I would say that there is a very specific type of suffering that every single person who worked on this project was put through, and it was the suffering of just having to maddeningly do the same thing again and again and again, but slightly different every time. I feel like in a lot of ways it was kind of like a training arc for everyone, where I feel like everyone's art, everyone's form was elevated by the end of it, just because there were all of these heavy constraints where it's like for Brandon on the music, yeah, all 54 of those tracks, they need the princess's leitmotif in it. So you'd better figure out 54 different ways to express that, which pushed his boundaries a lot. And I don't know. I feel comfy saying that this OST is the best work he's ever done, and I can't wait to see what he does next after it for Scarlet Hollow episode 5. Abby had to draw so many princesses.
I did. Honestly, I feel I got a pretty good end of that stick. Beyond chapter 2s, where all of their backgrounds have to look really similar, that one was mind-numbing. But then after that, they're all so different that it felt like I was drawing new people every time.
Yeah. If I ever have to write that interaction with that goddamn mirror in that goddamn cabin ever again, I'm going to jump out this window.
It got to a point where I was like, you know what? No one's acknowledging the mirror. I think I'm going to leave it over there too. Just leave it be.
Great. But because you could do things in any order, every single one of those has to exist as its own conversation, including the chapter 3 ones where we throw it right in front of you so you can't ignore it.
Yeah, so I wanted to jump back to the art real quick, Abby. I don't think we got into, and I'm sure you've had a similar question like this a lot. Do you have a princess that you were just, by the end of it, you're like, I don't want to draw this princess anymore?
That's a good point. I don't think I've been asked who my least favorite to draw was. Oh man.
You found the razor viscerally upsetting to draw by the end of it, like her all swords form.
Yeah, I think it's got to be the razor because I mean, she becomes just a big pile of knives. And like the pile of knives part was actually pretty easy to draw. It was her ribcage situation that was so difficult because I was just like, how did I draw this so good the first time? And why can't I imitate it in all of these other pictures of her? It's got to be between her and, even though I love drawing the Fury, she was a pain in the ass because she's got a lot of parts that I have to keep track of. She's the one who's like the flayed god. So she's got like
wearing a dress of her own skin.
The dress is easy. It's all of her muscles. I have to keep track of it. I have to draw it the same every time. It's got to have the same kind of shading or else it'll look weird. So the consistency for the Fury was the hard thing. And then with the razor, it's just, I have to draw her again. That thing. So,
and you have to draw her in action shots. Abby hates drawing action.
So are those like the square panels that like, so like if you were fighting the princess over the knife, those like 3 square panels?
Yeah, kind of.
Then there's other action shots that are like full screen CGs.
Yeah, I
like,
have
all
to
of them
draw
are
her
annoying.
Like, it was a bunch of stuff, and then there's like a separate variation for the ending of the Razor where you can force her knife body to crumple. So then I had to also draw the giant mini knife woman crumpling. So
did a great job.
It was quite the challenge.
Yeah,
it looked great.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
We have a lot of similarities, but there's just a few areas where there's like a heavy push and pull between us. One of them is like my main extracurricular growing up. The martial arts. So I'm always like, all right, so then you throw this kind of punch and then you move like this. And then Abby never wants to draw a fight scene ever.
Well, to be fair, you're also, I have to draw it from a first person perspective, which does not make it very fun, because I can absolutely draw action if it's two characters fighting, because
fair.
then it's like an interesting interaction. Whereas when it is just something is happening to your body, then it's like, oh, her limb is flying at you again.
Game 3 will be third person with a fixed design for the protagonist.
And it's nothing but action scenes, nothing but fights the whole time. So you both had a hand in the writing. How much did you guys enjoy writing the they're not all heroes, but all the voices of the heroes? So like the voice of the hunted and all. Did you? The better question is, did you enjoy writing the voices or the princess more?
The princess was always more enjoyable to write for the most part. There were some voices that were really fun. Really like the contrarian, really like the opportunist. But there's a lot of complexity with them, and there's a lot of challenges in terms of, like, especially when you get to chapter 3, there's a lot of conversations in the woods where a given chapter 3 might have as many as 4 different, like, potential voices who could show up. So all those conversations had to be structured in a way where it's like, and then if you have this combo, it veers off in this direction, and this combo veers off in this direction, but then they all have to join in on this central idea so the story can move forward and be consistent again. So that was like kind of maddening to write.
Yeah, I think that would probably sour you on almost anything. And not sour, I suppose.
No, I didn't sour, but it was a challenge.
Yeah, and plus the princess is so different that I think it's a similar thing to the art where she's so strange every time that figuring out her voice is really fun.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the visual aspect helped, whereas you have the visual, oh, hey, this is the prisoner. We know that she's devious and can't be trusted and has the chain and everything. Whereas, oh, another disembodied voice. All right, how's this guy got a sound? What's he look like? Who am I what friend am I picturing in my head that we know? Something like that.
And it is like Johnny did an incredible job just immediately coming up with a voice for like every single one of them.
Yeah.
It was pretty amazing.
I know that you guys had mentioned that, you kind of didn't want to talk about the ending, and like, it's more fun for everybody if they add their own interpretation. So I won't do that for you, but what is something that for players who play Scarlet Hollow or Slay the Princess, either one, what is something that you want players to come away with from either experience?
So something we were talking about earlier, and I tweeted about this a little bit tonight, is I feel like there's this very logical, task-driven orientation that people have when they play video games, that specifically for choice-driven narratives, I think lessens the experience. So this in the context of Slay the Princess, or folks who are constantly grasping either for, let me find the most logical choices to make rather than acting off of emotion, or people who enter either of our games kind of from the position of, well, I'm going to 100% this and see everything, and I'm going to be methodical about it, where we go out of our way to, one, make 100%ing it in terms of seeing every line next to impossible. There's so many tiny variations.
And it would drive you as insane as it drove us to write.
Yeah. But like at the end of the day, we want interacting with narrative games, and especially our narrative games, to be more about the joy of discovery, of putting yourself wholly in this position and reacting in this like, very emotional human way with the text, rather than min-maxing their way to an ideal world state. Yeah, like on Scarlet Hollow's development, when he first started designing interactive narratives, a big note on the wall to guide ourselves was avoiding something that really frustrated me growing up playing 2000s era BioWare games, which were hugely formative experiences, and I love them dearly. I do not mean this to be like an aggressive dunk, but it's like where there are right answers to every question, and it's like, they would pose interesting moral dilemmas, but then, if you looked at a guide in advance and you game the systems properly, there was always an optimal outcome, and then a playthrough became less about living in this world and grappling with these dilemmas as a means of examining yourself, and more, what is the step-by-step guide that I follow to achieve optimal happiness and good ending? So the takeaway we would want people to have is, don't do that.
Yeah. Play by your heart.
Stay off the internet. Get off the YouTube walkthrough video. What are you doing? Don't watch that. So Scarlet Hollow, I don't know how much longer that's going to take you, but let's say, you guys finish that up, you get the rest of those chapters out. What is next?
You got your thing first.
Yeah, I have a webcomic that I have to finish. It's been on hiatus for a very long time, but it will be finished as soon as Scarlet Hollow is done.
Yeah.
And then I do have another comic I want to do after
that.
We're
doing a third game.
I think we're probably going to do a third game before I can get to my little anthology that I want to do.
Yeah. But what third game is up in the air right now. We have a bunch of good ideas. That list expands and contracts pretty much every month, so who knows where we'll be a couple years from now when Scarlet Hollow is finished and
Tony has nothing to do but sit around and ponder while I finish my
which will take between like 1 and 2 years, probably 2.
More than 2, I don't know.
Probably more than 2. No. No.
He's his most dangerous when he's sitting around pondering like that.
Yeah, Abby visited her family and left me to my own devices for the first time since the pandemic started for like a couple weeks, and the script for the demo for Slay the Princess was done in that time.
That's
so yeah, who knows what any amount of time of pondering would do for me.
Yeah.
I'm going to think the next time my wife and kids leave me for like a day or two, I'm going to think about that and think about how unproductive I'm being just because you did that. So you guys still sound super busy. Tony, we kind of talked about what you were reading and playing a little bit, but Abby, are you reading and playing anything between all this work or listening to anything that stands out?
I sure am. I'm playing Dave the Diver. I also played Dredge earlier this year. It's rare for me to get sucked into a video game on my own without being like a group thing with Tony. So clearly my heart yearns for the sea. I'm very excited for the crossover DLC that's coming out.
Okay, yeah, that's not. I was wondering if that was out yet or not, because I heard about it.
That's Friday.
They made this just for me.
I may need to jump back into Dave the Diver. It's been a few months. Yeah, Dredge is great too. Oh my gosh, stop it. I've got so much I need to play, you guys. I think I already blew my last question on you guys. It's good.
Say okay.
It's good. Anything else about Slay the Princess or anything else you guys got going on over at Black Tabby Games? Where can the folks keep up with you? Where can they get Scarlet Hollow and Slay the Princess?
Buy them on Steam or GOG. We've got a Discord server and a mailing list. Those are probably the two best places to keep up with us. who knows how long Twitter will exist. I resent the fact that it remains our highest engagement platform, so I must remain in the tweet mines.
Freaking Twitter. I mean, you could always try LinkedIn. LinkedIn's numbers are going pretty good right now. Yeah, so hey guys, thank you so much for doing this tonight. Congrats on the release and also the success of the game. It seems from the outside looking in that people love it and people love what you're doing. And if I'm not mistaken, you guys have a stream coming up, right?
If this is going up on Monday, the stream will have happened.
Yes. The VOD will probably be up at some point, though. I'm very excited. We're having our voice actors read everything out live. So good luck to them, as if we haven't already put them through enough. But it should be a lot of fun.
I like to make them suffer. Through suffering, we are forged into better and more productive people.
It's my understanding John hasn't played the game yet.
He is not. He can't stand to hear his own performances because he starts nitpicking himself. So
I understand.
this live stream was actually his idea as a means of not waiting like 4 years to see how the game goes. Yeah, right. This wasn't even us.
That's great. Well, hey, if you're listening to this right now, I'm sure that VOD is up over on the Black Tabby Games YouTube channel or up on their Twitch. So go check it out over there.
Probably both.
Probably in both. Go look for those. Again, Abby, Tony, thank you so much. Amazing game. Keep up the great work and can't wait to see what you guys do next.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.